Welcome to How You Breathe is How You Live, a podcast dedicated to the radical idea that your life doesn't change until you live the truth. They say the truth will set you free, but they usually forget to mention it'll probably hurt your feelings and piss you off first. I'm Jake Parent, the founder of Breath.Energy, the world's first dedicated breathwork studio, and here we explore the deep architecture of the human experience. We aren't here just to talk about your struggles, because there is no struggle and the struggle is real. We're here to update the internal software that's been running the show since you were 5 years old. Whether we're diving into archetypes, self-awareness, anatomy, or transcendence, our goal is the same: to move you from survive to thrive. Because at the end of the day, how you breathe really is how you live. We're continuing our 10-part series on shadow work. After looking at the judge, the victim, and the avoider, today we meet the one who tries to fix it all, the perfectionist. If a crooked picture frame or a typo in an email makes your eye twitch, this one is for you. We're talking about malicious compliance, sleep procrastination, and why we'd rather do it ourselves than watch someone else do it wrong. It's a deep dive into how we use excellence as a shield and how to finally promote your inner perfectionist to a master craftsman. So let's talk about how you breathe into the beauty of the unfinished. Also, stay tuned for a lesson in effective learning involving a 2-year-old and a hot barbecue, and why a CrossFit champion might actually know more about rowing than I do. Let me guess, you are not a perfectionist, you just have standards. You notice the little things that are just a little off. The typo, the crooked frame, the email that should have been clearer. Your plan would have worked if people just followed it correctly. It's a quiet discipline, order, precision, the do it right the first time, every time mentality became the things that keep you safe. Because if everything is done perfectly, no one can criticize you, no one can blame you. The question that most perfectionists never ask is, what is this costing you? What does it do to your body to always be tight? To your relationships, to the people that you're always correcting out loud or silently? To your potential creativity? Most of your great ideas never make it because they get terminated before they can fully form. Perfectionism doesn't feel like fear. It feels like responsibility, like integrity, to be the adult in the room. But underneath all that pomp and circumstance and pageantry is a little kid who learned really early, if I'm flawless, I'll be safe. If I'm right, I won't be rejected. If I hold it together, there won't be a catastrophe. And this episode isn't about lowering your standards, although it might be useful to do so in some cases. It's about freeing the part of you that's exhausted from trying to hold the world in place. Because the perfectionist isn't the villain, it's a protector that never got to rest. And when integrated, that same energy doesn't create rigidity, it creates craftsmanship, beauty, and harmony. Let's talk about how perfection became armor and how it can become art instead. So are there any small things that irrationally bother you when it's done wrong?
Yeah, things that in the grand scheme of things don't really matter because the outcome is the same, but you did it wrong.
When I come in here to the breathwork studio and the mats aren't lined up correctly, like military precision order, it causes some distress in my body.
You can't run a laser level and see it on both sides.
I have considered buying like a 24-foot 2x4, can put it on the floor and like line them up like playing cards, just like bat them back and forth so everything's squared out. But that seems mildly excessive.
Potentially excessive only because the moment someone makes one step, that's gone now. That's bye-bye.
I'm okay with that, but we at least need to have the starting point of this was all laid out properly.
Yes, the beginning presentation.
Yes, the beginning presentation needs to be there. What you do with the plate after you cut into it and start eating the food, I'm okay with. I will say the one time somebody came into breathwork and I was mildly puzzled, bemused. They set up their mat like this was their personal alcove and were nesting. I may have a picture of it somewhere because it was a fortification. It was a barrier. There were ramparts. Like this thing was, I think by the time it was done, parts of it were good 3 feet off the floor. Yeah, it was something.
You're getting into fort territory there.
I was impressed. And
Sounds
also
impressive.
solidly judging. and questioning what led to this? How did we get here?
Who hurt you? Why are you here?
Yeah. Are we dealing with some sort of back injury that is catastrophic? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, kudos to them for coming in and doing it up. I guess they're not hurting anyone, right? So, oof.
My feelings.
Just your feelings.
My sense of order.
And how dare they?
Yeah, my sense of order was deeply disturbed and hurt that day. I just couldn't point to the doll where it hurt.
Yeah. We've all been there, I feel like.
Yes. So the perfectionist doesn't announce itself as perfectionism. It shows up as responsibility. It's the part of you that double checks everything and then checks it again and then redoes it just to be safe. You notice what's wrong before you notice what's working. Your mind scans for inefficiencies, errors, and loose ends automatically. Order is calming. Anything being out of place causes your eye to twitch. You end up doing more than your share, not because you want to, but because it feels easier than watching someone else do it wrong. There is no right. There is no wrong. There's only less skillful and more skillful, unless someone else is loading your dishwasher. Then there's definitely wrong in the world. That delegation can create tension. Letting things slide feels physically uncomfortable. You may hear yourself thinking things like, if I don't fix this, it'll bother me all day. I'll just do it myself because it's faster. That's one of my personal favorites, apparently. This could have been great if they paid more attention. Outwardly, you come across as composed, capable, and high-functioning, maybe a little too clean-cut. Internally, there's a constant low-grade pressure to stay ahead of mistakes. You're on time, prepared, and reliable, but you're also tense when plans change, irritated by inefficiency, but also annoyed when people don't follow the process. And this creates a conflict when the process is inefficient. Now you're doubly irritated. Sarcastic when standards aren't met, anxious that others will mess up the order and balance that you've created, quietly resentful when you're carrying the weight alone but refuse to let anyone else offer their inferior assistance. The perfectionist loves calm, clean systems, clear rules, defined roles. Vague is unsettling, and good enough feels reckless. And criticism, especially vague, poorly thought out, ill-defined criticism, hits hard. Even when it's mild, your body feels it as evidence of failure. So you tighten the standards, you work harder, you become more controlled, and over time this can lead to a strange paradox. You're respected, but not close. Trusted, but no one is open with you. Because underneath all that competence is a nervous system that learned, if I stay sharp, nothing bad will happen. And that belief is running the show. One of the other things that can happen with perfectionism is that it represses your shadow, because all of those talents and creativity are locked away because they may not be able to express themselves perfectly.
This is one of those moments that I'm realizing how far I've come. That's exciting. Question. I imagine it's pretty common, but sometimes, or at least more in the past, that's one of the things that I can see in this moment that I've gotten a lot better with, but getting responsibility and anxiety a little confused, like a little mixed up, which I think, clearly leads to people taking responsibility for things that aren't theirs to take that responsibility for because the outcome makes them anxious. Going back to that, I'll do it myself. Do you see that? I imagine it's pretty common. Am I right comparative to what you've seen?
Absolutely. That we've talked many times. This is quite the minefield in the feminine versus the masculine. In the feminine motherly instinct, which may not be in a physical female form, the feminine can express it through men, but what I see in the feminine instinct is often to protect people from their own actions. And that in the course of doing so, you are also taking away someone's free will. And that, I think I've told the story before that when my son was 2, he kept trying to reach out and touch the barbecue. And I kept going, don't do that, it's hot. And he would dance around it and act like he was going to touch it. And I was like, hot. And then he eventually touched it and was like, hot. I was like, yeah, that's hot. Whereas his mom was trying to wrestle him away from the barbecue so he didn't get burned. I was like, that's going to burn your fingers. This will be an effective form of learning that you will learn not to do that again far more effectively than me trying to keep you from the consequences of it. So the perfectionist isn't born, it's recruited. Long before there were words like perfectionism or standards, there was a nervous system trying to solve one question: how do I stay safe here? How do I stay connected? For many perfectionists, early life carried some form of unpredictability. emotional inconsistency, high expectations, constant criticism. Nothing was ever good enough. Chaos, conflict, instability, or they had the opposite. They had quiet homes where love was earned through performance, not presence. And as it turns out, kids learn really quick. Order becomes relief, rules become protection, doing things right becomes a way to avoid attention for the wrong reasons, or to earn it at all. In some homes, being correct meant not getting in trouble. In others, being exceptional meant getting noticed. In many, being self-controlled meant not adding to the burden. The nervous system made a brilliant calculation. If I'm flawless, I won't be criticized. If I'm responsible, I won't be abandoned. Perfect hair, perfect posture, tension-rigid movements, that there's no fluidity to them, that perfection didn't start as ambition, it started as self-perfection. And for a while it worked. Praise came, stability increased, chaos receded, so the system locked it in as law. The child who learned to be impeccable didn't learn to be safe while being imperfect. So even decades later, their body still believes mistakes equal danger, that a mess becomes a threat, and that relaxation is risky. The perfectionist isn't trying to be superior. They're trying to prevent disaster, or to prevent taking incoming damage. And when you understand that, something shifts. Because many times what looks like someone with a stick in their butt was once courage standing strong in a little body, doing everything it could to create order and not collapse under pressure. So what's the cost of staying unintegrated? The perfectionist is incredibly effective at preventing mistakes. What it's not very good at is intimacy. If this isn't addressed, the cost isn't just internal stress, it shows up between you and the people that you care about. In relationships, the perfectionist often leads with correction instead of curiosity. You may not think of yourself as being critical, you're just specific, precise, clear about how things should be done. Back when I owned a CrossFit gym, I was semi-famous in CrossFit land and had an opportunity to hang out with a lot of people in CrossFit that athletically I should not have been hanging out with. That their performance was far superior to mine. And one of the guys I got to hang out with fairly frequently was OPT, James. And he was the winner of the very first CrossFit Games. And one day when we were working out, we were on rowing machines, and he was rowing oddly, what I would call incorrectly. That when you row, you bend your legs forward as long as you can, you drive with your legs, you lean with your waist, and he was rowing, barely bending his legs, big exaggerated torso bend, exaggerated pull backwards, and then pull with the arms. So he was barely using his legs on the row, which is an odd way to do it because almost all the power comes from. And at the time, me being me and thinking I'm better than everybody else, thought that's not how you row. And then I sat there for a second and thought, he's a CrossFit Games winner and you're not. He might know something you don't. So afterwards, I went up and asked him about it. I was like, hey, why were you rowing like that? That is different. And he said, yeah. So the normal rowing is incredibly quad dominant. And the way I was rowing, it takes all the work off of your quads, it puts it back on your hamstring. The rest of this workout is quad dominant. So I was trying to give my quads a chance to rest while still doing this part of the workout so that I'd have energy for the other parts of it. Aha. So you are smarter than me. This is hurtful on two accounts. So a lot of times the things that you are, if you can approach them with curiosity, you may learn something, much as I did. But when you're busy being critical, often perfectionists and hypercriticism with the judge, we've talked about that like you think you're being more gentle with other people than you are with yourself, and you are probably being more gentle with them than you are with yourself. That doesn't mean you're being gentle. It just means you're being more gentle than the absolute catastrophe that you're foisting upon yourself. So to the people closest to you, it can feel like nothing's ever quite right, that feedback comes before appreciation, and love feels conditional on performance, that when you get it right, then I will finally love you. That your people in your life may start to walk on eggshells, not because you're loud in your criticism, but because your disappointment is quiet and sharp. They can feel the sigh, they can feel the pause, they can feel the silent judgment, and the subtle tightening when something isn't done correctly. And over time, they may stop trying because it feels impossible to please you. I've certainly done that in my life where I've noticed it doesn't matter what I do for this person. It's never going to be good enough. So I'll put in the minimum amount of effort possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's cost versus benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seemed like a good idea to me.
Saved by effort.
In friendships, the perfectionist can unintentionally become the authority instead of a peer or an equal. That you're the planner, the organizer, the one who knows the, I'm using air quotes here, right way. Flexibility becomes rigid. Spontaneous coincidences die. That former collaborations become malicious compliance, which if you've ever been on Reddit, that is one of my favorite subreddits, malicious compliance, where someone gives you rules and you follow them exactly, and disaster ensues. People feel corrected when they were hoping to feel accepted. In work environments, the perfectionist often became indispensable and exhausted. You pick up the slack, you redo work silently, you carry your resentment privately. Others may experience you as intimidating, exacting, or emotionally unavailable, even though you're deeply committed to excellence and integrity. And internally, the cost is relentless. There's very little rest, there's almost no celebration, and success barely registers before the next flaw demands attention. You live in a constant state of almost enough, because the perfectionist believes relaxation invites failure, softness invites mistakes, letting go invites judgment, so you stay vigilant or on guard, controlled, tight. Joy becomes conditional, or even worse, something for the future. Creativity becomes constrained or non-existent. Connection becomes transactional.
It's crazy to me that even the quest for rest can be handled with either procrastination paralysis or, on the opposite end, like over-criticism. It's even rest, even just stopping to breathe.
There's this thing called sleep procrastination. People,
well acquainted.
Yes, people get in bed and doom scroll because they have not had control over anything else in their day. They participate in this aberrant behavior of not going to sleep when they're supposed to because they're proving that they're in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not entirely beneficial, by the way.
Even going so far as maybe counterproductive.
Oh, yeah. I would say that's true.
Yeah. You dove right past not beneficial into faux pas land.
It's a do-si-do I'm familiar with.
Yes. The unintegrated perfectionist was never taught that a mess could be safe. And the tragedy isn't that the perfectionist cares too much. It's that they never learned how to care without control or with acceptance. And until that changes, order keeps you respected, but at a distance. So what's more difficult for you, receiving help or receiving feedback?
Definitely receiving help. I can take feedback all day long.
Same. Yeah. I've often said in my entire athletic career, 19 years, I got told good job one time.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, it was a good day.
You clearly still remember it.
Yeah, I need a guy and broke his ribs, and the coach was like, that was awesome. I was like, oh, that's all I got to do?
I can do this.
I can do that.
Yeah, and that's one of the ways, too, that I've seen that it's very clear to me where I've improved, because feedback used to feel threatening because I felt like I was being attacked or like I just did something wrong without trying, maybe because I was learning or something, usually because I was learning. And then when you take that school of thought away, when you have good people in your life that are just trying to make you better at what you're trying to do, it can be pretty fantastic when you're open to that.
Right. Yeah, that's one of those things where, as a youth, my dad would tell me not to correct anybody you didn't love because it just comes off as criticism. He didn't tell me not to sit there and silently judge.
So you perfected it?
Yeah, I just got really good at that. I guess that's how you want to go through life. Slappy.
Sometimes I think that's the more beneficial decision for us. Again, it just comes down to am I going to invest energy into this person? And sometimes it's a yes, and sometimes it's not a yes.
Yes. So what happens when you integrate your perfectionism and become the craftsman? When the perfectionist is no longer running the nervous system, it doesn't disappear. It refines, it gets promoted, it gets upgraded. One of the things that we've talked about the shadow is that it doesn't go away. It just gets promoted to a new job. That energy is still there, and that energy has to do something. That energy isn't just going to exhaust itself without having some place to go. That the integration doesn't become lower standards. It changes who is holding those standards. And instead of being driven by fear of error or making mistakes, the craftsman comes guided by care. This is where perfectionism alchemizes into that craftsmanship. And craftsmanship isn't about performing flawlessly. It's about presence and meeting the agreed upon standards. The craftsman can still see details, but without tension. You still value quality, but without rigidity. You still hold standards, but without superiority. Work becomes intentional, not compulsive, precise, not punishing. And in relationships, the way that this shifts is incredible. Feedback becomes attunement and alignment instead of correction. Standards become shared agreements instead of silent tests. Others feel invited to grow and not measured. When you talked about, do you give other people feedback or not? One of the things I've had to learn is like, would you like to be better? Yes. Would you like to be better at life? No? Very well. As you were. Continue on.
Absolutely. What happens when if someone were to say yes and then their talk, like their walk don't match their talk? I imagine you've come up against that more than once.
Oh, I've come up against that with myself. There are many times where I'm going to make this about me because that's the subject that I know the best, in that I have wanted improvement in an area of my life. And I'm not ready to do the thing that I've been advised to do, that I can look at it and go, that is the best course of action. That would be very good. And something mentally, emotionally, spiritually inside of me is not ready to make that shift yet. Hey, you need to go have this difficult conversation with this person so that you can have a better life. Okay, but not today. We are going to have that conversation, but I'm not quite ready or braced for that yet.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where sometimes people give me feedback of like, hey, do you know this is a problem in your life and that you have a shortcoming here? I'm like, yes, I do. It is on the list of things that I'm going to address in my life. It has not gotten to the top of the list. Someday it will, but today is not the day.
You can only do so many things at once.
Yes, that I can only take one corrective measure at a time. As it turns out, that Excel spreadsheet is quite lengthy. I'll be happy to add your notes to it.
That's fantastic. I like this.
When you give people that feedback, there's room for human variation, for learning curves, for differences. Early on as a manager, I realized very quickly that I am very efficient at using a computer, and then I would delegate a task to a direct report, and then I would watch them use their computer, and it was all I could do not to take their mouse out of their hand and go, what are you doing? Once you learn Control-C to copy and Control-V to paste, and you see someone taking their mouse and going up to edit, and then coming and clicking, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't watch this.
Yeah.
But it's not my job to force that efficiency upon them, that like, this is their pace, this is their variation, this is how they like to approach their work. It's not my job to specify the ways in me that, hey, I have an outcome I'd like you to produce, and now I'm going to close my eyes and look in the other direction while you create it. And I imagine that there have been other people in my life who have watched me trying to accomplish a task with their hand on their forehead going, good Lord, could someone pin a note to this kid's shirt? I got to get here without adult supervision. But that variation is where the beauty emerges. It's not sterile perfection, but lived beauty. The kind that allows texture, warmth, and imperfection to coexist with excellence. It's a beauty that breathes. That bonsai trees are beautiful because of their lack of perfection. It's the twists, it's the turns, it's the imperfection in the tree where the bark's been stripped, where they've been scarred, that creates that beauty. And I had a friend who owned a auto body shop where they did hand pinstriping, and which is a growing lost art. And a guy had brought a card into him and was adamant they were doing a design on the hood, and that both sides of the hood be a mirror image, that it'd be perfect. And he was like, yeah, that's not how this works. There's going to be differences from one side to the next because we're doing this by hand. And if you would like an artisanally created piece, there's going to be imperfections in it, and that's where the beauty is. The beauty is in the imperfections. If you want it to be perfect, just take it to some place, have it printed, and then just...
Yeah, use a stencil.
But not even stencil. They still had the, what do they call the wraps they put on buses? The wrap. Just get your hood wrapped.
Yeah.
Yeah. PVC, vinyl, whatever it is that they put on hoods. And it'll be perfect. And he's like, well, that doesn't look good. And he's like...
Yeah.
Exactly. That there is... I used to build and refinish furniture, and it was amazing how often the flaws in the piece became the thing that people do, the thing that we were trying to hide or get out of the wood. They were like, oh, this is beautiful. It's like, oh.
Well, right.
Which is I'm looking at 30 feet of IKEA furniture here that is all perfectly the same
Yeah.
and very bland.
Yeah.
And what is the piece of furniture that we love? Oh, this Mexican door that became a table that is all beat to smithereens and is glorious in all its imperfections and flaws and scars. At its deepest level, the craftsman embodies ethical harmony, not morality rooted in fear of being wrong, but honor rooted in coherence, clarity, and alignment. You do the right thing not because you have to, but because it's in alignment. And right and wrong can soften into wisdom. Rules evolve into principles. Order becomes a container for life, not a cage around it. You physically relax without trying, that you automatically start to breathe deeper, that your jaw loosens, and your system learns that it can stay safe without gripping and clinging. And the surprising thing is, the perfectionist finally gets what it wanted all along. Respect without isolation, excellence without exhaustion, structure without strain. The perfectionist was never meant to be your prison guard. It was meant to be an artist and a craftsman. It wasn't supposed to keep you from life. It helps you shape it with care, clarity, and calm. And this is where the body gets to finish the story that the mind can't. So one of the things, like, where has imperfection actually made something more beautiful? So one of the things I'm going to recommend later is practicing art. And that I've practiced dot art. And dot art is you take a little brown ball, dip it in paint, dip it on paper, and then you just start making designs out of it. And Kim and I were doing that for a while. And the way you do dot art is your personality emerges onto the page, both in the colors that you pick, the designs that you paint, and then the way that you do them. So the way that I do designs, it's very big dots spread out, takes up the whole page, and it's a little messy. And when Kim does dot art, it's very small dots, very close together, very detail-oriented, which perfectly matches our personality. Kim was doing one, and maybe a fourth of the way through what would have been a finished project, she's like, I made a mistake. This is terrible. I hate this. I'm not going to work anymore. And she threw the paper to the side, and I just picked the paper up, and I started working on it. And because I don't care if there's mistakes when I make art, I'm just trying to move as fast as I can without thinking. And I started working on it. And I got about halfway through it, and she wanted her paper back. She was like, hey, give me that back. That looks good now. And I was like, no, this is mine now. I have taken this. I have created it. This is my piece now. You go back to your little world of perfection, little teeny tiny dots that nobody can see. So that is a case where imperfection did make something more beautiful. So how do we overcome this perfectionism with breath work? That we're moving from a place of control and transitioning that to a place of trust, and then we can move into a place of flow. So when we do breath work, it's not about breathing correctly. That's one of the things I say in the introduction video, that there's no right way to do breath work. There's no wrong way to do breath work. There's only more skillful and less skillful, and the skill is all in how easily you can flow from one breath to the next without having a clear distinction between one, that it's about letting go of control. And it's also about noticing where you're still trying to control in order to feel safe. And I still remember when I was first learning breath work, the skill that it took, that we focus on the inhale, our effort is on the inhale, and then we relax on the exhale. Well, when you relax on the exhale, it's a lot like the ringing of a bell or a chime. And at a certain point, you go, when does the chime stop ringing? And it's very difficult, like, well, I can still kind of hear it, but I'm not really hearing it. And your breath does the same thing, in that it crescendos down. So at like, what point did that breath actually stop? And when do I initiate the inhale on the next breath? And where's the transition there? And that took me a while to develop that. But it's very easy now. But that is the skill of breath work, is how easily can you transition from one part to the next without making it look like a transition. So our primary intention in breath work is to let your nervous system experience safety without precision if you're a perfectionist. One of the first experiences that almost everybody has during breath work is that they become calm, centered, present, and grounded. That is the first experience of breath work, is that state of calmness. And from that, when you are calm, you are going to feel safe. And as you experience that safety, can you let go of the precision of, I have to breathe exactly right? And that just breathe how the breaths come. And one of the things we do when we do breath work is we're setting an intention. So here's a couple of intentions that you could try out if you suffer with the shadow of perfectionism. I am grateful that I'm free to experiment. I am safe even when I'm not managing everything. I don't have to be perfect to be whole. I can trust what moves through me. I can care without control. So you can try out some of those intentions and see how it works for you. So when you're before breath work, one of the things that you're going to notice is, or when you're doing breath work, we want you to have effort on the inhale, that you are going to use effort on the inhale and then just relax. But we want the rest of your body to be relaxed as well. So where do you feel when you begin to do breath work? Where do you feel tension? Where do you feel effort? And early on in my breath work journey, when I would do breath work, my mid back would get tight. And not consciously, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to flex my shoulder blades and arch up. I would just start breathing and I'm arched up. I'm like, I still don't know what that's about. But I did know that I had to consciously tell myself, relax the shoulders, relax your spine. I don't know what's going on here. You don't need to know what's going on here. You don't have to have the story. Just keep breathing and allow the breath to be continuous and not perfect, that you don't have to correct it. You don't have to fix. You don't have to improve. I was just trying to relax. That being in control is not a flaw. It's just a habit that used to keep you safe. And then allowing trust. What happens if you soften by 5%? What if you use 5% less effort? Not just completely letting go, but just loosening your grip on the experience. Let the inhale arrive on its own. Let the exhale release without shaping it, and trust the breath to know what it needs to do without supervision. That the breath may become uneven. It may become shallow. It may become emotional. I've had some braggedy breaths in breath work, and I don't know why they were that way. But nothing's wrong. That you don't need perfection to function. You just need permission to let it flow. And then where does that when you enter that flow state, your body, one of the things I love about breath work is when people tell me they had a little dance party during breath work and clearly they didn't move at all. Their body never got up and did anything. That you may feel emotional sensations of movement in your body and may feel that sense of flow in your body while you're doing breath work. And one of the other things I love about breath work is that we call it conscious connected breath work, that you're going to consciously think about your breath. And then you're going to connect your breaths. One breath's connected to the next breath, so that there's no pausing between your breath. But one of the beautiful things that happens is after about 20 minutes of consciously focusing on your breath, that consciousness goes away, and you go from breathing your breath to your breath breathing you. And that connected breath stays intact without you consciously thinking it anymore. It's just a flywheel of momentum that keeps turning over of connected breaths. And that's when flow begins to happen. And it's intelligence without control.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I think it's that moment, going back to you were talking about tension, and I think it's that moment when my breath starts to breathe me that I realize the leftover tension in my body, the muscles that get a little tense, but I'm just not consciously aware. And so I start, some of the greatest advice I've ever gotten is just go limp, just loosen everything, take a deep breath and let it all go. And for me, it's largely the muscles in like my upper back, my shoulders. I carry a lot of tension in the back of my head, like base of the skull. It's pretty common. And when those muscles really release, I feel like it's almost, in a sense, like a gateway to that flow, when you can finally just take that final breath and attune.
And I think that breath is trust. Trust and safety. I guess that's what the safety is trust. So like I trust that I'm safe. And that once you let go of that and enter that flow, that order comes from trust. It can emerge from trust, not before it.
Or even to your point, the safety in the lack of order and just allowing things to be as they are, to present how they will.
Yeah, I often think of, there's so many Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I don't know which one it is. But there's one where the British guy's ship is being blown to smithereens. And he is very elegantly walking down the stairs with his hand on the handrail like nothing is going on about him while everything is blowing up. And I'm like, perfect. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Everything's imploding. I'm still going to be elegant.
Yeah, that is a very visually pleasing scene. I don't know what movie it is either, but I've definitely seen that at like meme style,
Right. How's your day going?
Let me show you.
Yes.
Yeah, and it is. It's beautiful in its elegance and its chaos.
Yeah. So what can you do this week to help? Outside of breathwork, what can you do to help integrate your perfectionist shadow? Notice where you're confusing care with control. One day, Choose one small situation where you would normally correct, optimize, reorganize, or silently judge, and try something different. Pause, take a breath, and just soften by about 5%. And then ask yourself, what would good enough look like here? What would happen if I didn't fix this? Can I stay present without improving the moment? What would this look like if it were easy? I was talking with our friend Josh earlier this week about how I am world class at MacGyvering and refuse to MacGyver almost anything because I grew up in a household where we MacGyvered things as a temporary solution that were still there 20 years later. And I remember like fixing a muffler with a red bandana, and 3 years later, you could still see the red bandana hanging out the bottom of the car. And somewhere around 18, 19, I was like, there's no more MacGyvering. Either we fix it right or we don't fix it.
Yeah.
Unless we're, in dire circumstances, and then I'll bust that skill set out.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah, no, I can identify with that. I think it's part of just growing up under the poverty limit.
Mm-hmm.
You do what you can with what you've got, and sometimes you don't got what you need.
I don't even think we were poor. I think they were just cheap.
That's a good distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, there were some periods of poverty in our life, but there was also like, I think we have more money than this. And then you're just going to throw a nickel around like it's a manhole cover.
That's a new one to me. Throw a nickel around like it's a manhole cover.
I think one of the things my dad used to say is you come home and ask for some nominal amount of money, like $5. And he was like, what are you going to do? Buy the whole town? I said, no, Dad, I'm not staging a hostile takeover of the school with my $5. Thank you. I'd like to go see a movie.
It's not even enough to pay off my friends.
Yes. One of the other things you can practice throughout the week is that in your relationships, you can practice appreciation before correction. Say what's working first, even if your mind sees 10 things that aren't. At work, submit something that is 80 to 90% complete to your normal standards and notice what actually happens. Not what you fear will happen, but what does happen. And watch for the impulse to tighten. That impulse is the perfectionist trying to, using air quotes here again, help. When it shows up, silently say to yourself, thank you, I've got this for now. And at the end of the week, reflect, where did I loosen control and survive? Where did trust create more ease than precision? What didn't fall apart when I stopped holding it together? This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about relocating them from fear to wisdom. Excellence doesn't disappear when control softens. It finally gets room to breathe. One of the things that is excellent for perfectionists to do, that life and career doesn't come from having perfect plans. It comes from running small, low-risk experiments. And that when you run an experiment, sometimes your experiments aren't going to work. And this was one of the things I learned early on in direct marketing when we would do Google AdWords campaigns, that 80% of the marketing ideas that any marketer has.
That's a much higher number than I would have thought.
And let me tell you, 100% of the ideas that didn't work were the ones that I loved the most. Like every idea that I was like, this is the greatest idea ever. Every single time that was a turd. Like without fail. I learned very early and often not to bet on me.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And that you just had to treat it as information, that it wasn't a personal indictment. Hey, we put some words together here. Those words didn't work. What did work? Let's be curious about this, not certain. So when I say not betting on me, that every time I was certain about myself, cue me getting shot in the foot 30 seconds later, hoisted on my own petard, as they say. And that when you shift from being goal or process obsessed and shift towards learning obsession, that we're trying to learn insight, not about immediate success. So anytime we would start a campaign, anytime we would do something, hey, I'm just trying to learn here. And if I went into it saying I'm trying to learn something here, it got better much more quickly than if I went into it going, I have to hit this metric number, I have to hit this KPI, I've got to hit this return on spend, return on ad spend. That always went horribly. And, you can be flexible about your identity, and that when you experiment a lot, it prevents you from being over-identifying with a single path, that there are many paths to the same destination.
Is that the same as saying it keeps you from being like overly attached to an outcome?
Many times the outcome is the outcome that we're looking for.
Right.
Like one of the things that you want to do that I like to do is let's define success.
Solve for
times
X.
in business, a lot of businesses that I worked in, I would joke that they would shoot an arrow in the air, and then wherever it landed, they'd draw a bullseye around it, and then pat themselves on the back for hitting a bullseye.
Wow.
And then I would just go back to my office and facepalm and slam my head on the desk. No wonder we're all geniuses. We changed the answer key after we've taken the test. So defining success. And that is the difference between tenacity and stubbornness. So with tenacity, the goal does not change. The path that you're going to get there may be about 1,000 different variations. Being stubborn is, this is the way we do it, so this is the way we do it. I don't care what the outcome is. I'm just going to keep doing the same stupid process. So through most of my life, I've tried to be tenacious, but occasionally I've been stubborn. I'm sure there are a couple people who are listening to this just spit their coffee out. I'm not listening to them.
Yeah, when you say it like that, the difference is pretty clear.
Yeah, and progress isn't linear,
Yeah.
especially when you're doing
True
experiments.
story.
It's failure, negative, huge win. That it's not like, oh, I tried 1,000 things and I made a 10% improvement. No, I went from losing big money to now I'm just rolling around in it, and it's working phenomenally. And that sustainable growth comes from alignment, not willpower or hustle or I'll work harder, or that like hard work does matter, diligence does matter, but like it shouldn't be a grind. That many times when people are hustling or grinding, when things are grinding, it means they're not in alignment. That if you see a physical system, you're like, this is grinding. It's like, all right, well, what's out of alignment here? Like, let's get the skids lined up so it can move a little bit more easily. And that meaningful action or meaningful change happens when action is playful, reversible, and time-bound.
What does time?
You have a deadline.
Got it.
I mean, how often do you not do things until it's the last minute? So why not create the last minute every day?
Yeah.
Hey, when do we have to get this ad out? In the next 5 minutes. And reversible is this a decision that we can redo? Is this something that we can do over? Is this something that we can try again?
I imagine that would go pretty far to show you just how few things are like catastrophic, terribly important decisions.
Correct. There aren't many things that are irreversible, and it's another frustration I often saw common in the business world and sometimes in the personal world is people over obsess about easily reversible and then just blindly leap off the cliff at non-reversible. Jeff Bezos at Amazon called this one-way doors versus two-way doors. Hey, if you walk out that door, there's no walking back in.
Can't come back in.
Can't come back in. Can't unring that bell. And then there's other ones like walked out and didn't like that, coming right back. The hypothesis mindset of if I do this, it might lead to that. You know, I talked about learning my lesson while writing headlines and ads, and that often, this may come as a shock to you, I have a lot of self-belief. Some people have often gone so far as to call it arrogant. And many of the other people who work in marketing, as it turns out, enterprise, also have that same belief in themselves. So we would come up with ideas. I think my idea is better than yours. And then we would bet money. I've got $100 that says my headline is going to outperform your headline. You're on. And then we both win.
Who got the money if you both lost?
I think it just was a wash. Or manager took it. And one of the other things you want to do is you want to pay attention to the signal versus the outcome. When you talk about like receiving feedback, that it's not just the result. It's like, what is the message I'm being sent here? And I think art is one of the best ways that you can practice imperfection and being messy. And that I don't care what kind of art practice it is, painting, drawing, sculpting, just do things to play with it. Like being playful and just trying to create. I try to create as fast as I can because when I'm moving quickly, I don't think as much. So I'm just going with the moment.
Is that your pro wrestler energy?
That is my pro wrestler energy.
That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
And like, Kim's hummingbird, very precise energy. Yeah.
We just got to go with this. That you want to try those tiny experiences. That if I try this for this long, what is it that I hope I'll learn? Not what is it I hope I'll get, not what is it I hope will happen, what is it I receive. What am I going to learn from this? And that anti-goal checklist, it doesn't mean that you give up your story of success or what success looks like or what is the ultimate outcome that we want. In my life, most of the time I've defined success. By the time I get 80% of the way to what success looks like, I've already redefined it. Hey, I thought I wanted this we're going to need to pivot a little bit to something else that I've decided I like more. And some of the people I feel truly sorry for is they've find success, and no matter what happens, they've already figured out, when I get to this point of success, I'm going to be miserable with this success. I don't like it. I don't want it anymore. But because at some point in the past I chose that, I can't change it. Like they've got these stone tablets somewhere in their own psyche that they can't edit anymore, that there's only read, there's no rewrite.
I can understand how that rigidity in thinking would detract from it quite a bit.
So instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? You can ask, what do I want to understand? What do I want to experience? And this is a big one. What do I want to rule out? Like, fortunately, I have done enough things in life that people are like, hey, have you ever thought about this? Yep, did that. Didn't work. It's off the list. Not doing it again. That it gives you the ability to rule out options. So you don't find your path by thinking harder in life. You find it by testing reality gently, repeatedly, and honestly. Clarity is not a prerequisite for action, although it does help greatly. It's a byproduct of it. What was that laugh for?
Oh, you made a comment about the thinking. The thinking is always what stops me. It's what gets me. It sends me somewhere on that binary of procrastination paralysis to the opposite end of, just being overcritical of everything. And sometimes what we talk about so closely aligns with what's happening in my life that my immediate reaction is just to want to bang my head on the table. But, who does that really help, It's not helping me.
I'd be entertained.
Yeah, right. So that's what I was laughing about, is just that
I'm over here enormously entertained that you save your binary nature for your overthinking, but not your sexuality.
We're all programmed, man. Clearly, I understand one more than the other.
And I have very non-binary thinking. My thoughts identify as a Z.
That's really funny.
I'm glad you took it that way. I'm sure there's some transgender that's going to try and burn my house down over it.
No, he can't
I'll
please
be entertained
everyone.
by that as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you would be. Would be.
A mob, pitchforks, torches. I'm going to be famous.
Famous or canceled or both.
There is a comedy show out right now in which everybody at it is trying to get canceled so that they can break through.
That sounds delightful.
Yes.
I can't imagine the things that are said on those stages.
So let's close this out with a poem by Ellen Bass called The Thing Is. And I think this ends the conversation better than perfection ever could. To love life, to love it even when you have no stomach for it and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more terrible than any shape you can imagine, or no shape at all. The skinless face of naked suffering, even then, to love life, to love it even then, to find a place for it, to make a place for it in the shards and healing sands of the self and the full-on shore wind of love.
That was really beautiful.
Any of those lines stick with you?
Yeah, it just brings to mind some of the conversations we've had about being open to the lows so you can be open to the highs.
This poem doesn't deny that life is messy. It doesn't polish pain or resolve the contradiction. It's trying to tell the truth. Things break, people let you down, you fail, and the world is unfinished. And the invitation isn't to fix it. The invitation is to love anyway. That's the medicine for the perfectionist. Not apathy, not lowered standards, but a deeper devotion, one that doesn't require flawlessness to stay open. Because when you stop trying to earn your worth through precision, something astonishing happens. You become available. Beauty that isn't curated. You're available to relationships that don't perform, available to breath that moves on its own timing. Perfectionism says, I will love this when it's right. The creative says, I can love this because it's real. You were never meant to organize the world into safety. You were meant to meet it, human and present, exactly as it is. And let that be enough this week. Not perfect, but alive. Because how you breathe is how you live. Take a breath full of life.